This is a quick review of a webinar I carried out with PageLizard discussing digital article publishing. Hello, this webinar comes to you from PageLizard. I'm Sean Briggs, I'm an independent publishing consultant. I've worked in publishing for over 25 years. The last 5 years I've been focused on digital editions, and the last 2 years I've been working with both vendors and publishers together. PageLizard have been around for 10 years, focusing on XML, HTML publishing. They create adaptive applications optimized for mobile, and they have article-based publishing through an agile CMS. So here's a question to bear in mind. Currently, print publishers have a print edition, a digital edition, a website, maybe Facebook and Twitter, possibly one or two other channels. However, if you look at the digital audience, it's vast, and this diagram shows you the kind of channels that are available to us. Magazine media is still exciting and interesting to an audience, and now we've got to take that content and give it to all of these channels. So what do I mean by article-based publishing? For me, it's instead of producing a weekly or a monthly or a biannual edition, you actually strip that content into individual articles and you deliver those articles into the most appropriate channel. Right now, for most publishers, this means taking printed magazine content and pairing it back to individual stories so that you can place it in Facebook or Twitter. What's coming is far more exciting. Apple News format is actually a media channel. Google are also planning something. Facebook articles is exactly the same sort of idea. You take good quality editorial content and you place it where the audience lives. Article-based publishing is already in existence. It tends to be as an add-on to digital editions, so you might get some time-sensitive content there, something that needed to get to the audience quickly. In weeklies, that's even more relevant. However, it starts to be much more exciting once you take individual articles themselves and place those into the channels that are appropriate. So you might have content going into Twitter, you might have it going into Instagram, it might go into Pinterest. Article-based publishing has been with us for some time. You can see an example here of Harper's Bazaar from New York placed into Flipboard. LinkedIn Pulse takes RSS feeds. MSN will pay for individual articles, as will Yahoo, and there's talk of how Google are going to integrate articles into their editions. And we shouldn't forget email, newsletters and website. These are forms of article-based publishing that publishers have been involved with for several years now. So why are we talking about digital articles right now? Well, it's simply because Apple have announced that they're creating a new format, which is Apple News format. This is going to be an article-based environment. They'll take their app and they'll pre-install it on all of their iOS 9 devices. Now, given that Apple have around about 1 billion mobile devices already in circulation, it's estimated that iOS 9 with Apple News will be installed on somewhere between 250 to 350 million devices within the first 12 months. That means your content can be delivered into one application across 350 million digital audience. Now that starts to look interesting, and then if you add in Facebook instant articles, so individual editorial content going into all those Facebook accounts, then we're suddenly looking at hundreds of millions of potential digital audiences. Not only that, but media channels will start to take feeds and social channels start to take feeds. So wherever your digital audience are, you should now be able to take an individual digital article from your editorial CMS and deliver that to where these people live. If you can't do this, then for many in those audiences, for those people using the Apple devices, for people living in Instagram and Pinterest and Facebook, you don't exist. If you can't get your content in front of them, they're not going to come to you in the future. Okay, so why is article-based publishing so important? Well, I think there's been something wrong with print publishing for a long time, and it's one of those things that publishers tend not to talk about too much. It's the engagement they have on their editorial content. I don't know of any magazine that gets 100% engagement. And what I mean by that is a person sits down and reads every single article and is thoroughly engaged by it. There may be some, but for most, I think we all appreciate that probably 50% of that content is fully engaging, another 25% is kind of interesting, and the other 25% I don't want to really read. And we know this now through digital editions, that people linger on certain stories and completely skip by others. We know that at the beginning of the magazine it's high engagement and very few people will actually read to the full end of a magazine. Now, when we move to digital articles, we've got the opportunity to improve on that. The potential here is to use algorithms that understand what your individual person wants. So they may be fully interested in fashion, but actually they are also interested in cars, they're also interested in shoes, they're also interested in kittens. Whatever it is, we should be able to put together a digital feed that is much more appropriate to that individual. And when we do that, then we can also start to put context-related advertising into that channel. And this means that the advertising will be much more relevant. So imagine that a woman is looking through Cosmopolitan, she's been a young, free and single woman, she suddenly finds herself pregnant. She's still interested in the Cosmopolitan content, but now we can start to put pregnancy content in there. Or it could be that she's simply now thinking of upgrading her car, buying a new car, and we can start to put car articles in there and maybe car advertising in there, and there'll be full engagement in that because it's relevant to her in her channel. The important thing to bear in mind here is by stripping content into individual articles, it does mean we can put the content where these people live. So if they only ever use Pinterest, we can start putting images and small leads into Pinterest. If they live in Instagram, we can put images in there and draw them to either the printed magazine or the website or some event. The point being is your content has to go out and find the audience, not the other way around. Okay, so what is a publisher to do? I think the first thing is let go of the fear. I still hear people talking about cannibalization of content. If we do this in the digital channel, the print channel will suffer. Well, the print channel is already suffering, but we know now that statistically, people who buy a print product are most unlikely to buy a digital product as well. There's a 5 to 7% overlap. We also know that a Facebook person is probably not a Twitter user. There's a 5 to 7% overlap. Instagram versus Pulse, 5 to 7% overlap. Stop worrying about cannibalization. The other thing is, publishers cannot passively expect the audience to seek their content. What we have to do now is go out and find that audience, put content into their channels and make sure that it's relevant to them. It's important that we're clear about why we're putting content into a particular channel, why we're putting images onto Pinterest or Instagram, why we're sending text messages or WhatsApp messages or Snapchat messages. Why is it we're doing this? How do we make money from it? How do we place advertising against it? How do we engage this audience? All of these are challenging but important questions. Now, short term, we're going to take the print content because print is still driving everything. We work towards a weekly, we work towards a monthly. The beautiful finished articles are at the time when the magazine is about to be printed. So short term, we have to work with print content, and that means, generally speaking, taking a PDF or the finished print content, stripping it back to its individual articles, and then publishing those. Looking slightly further ahead, we turn that on its head. We take individual articles and we push them towards the different channels, and one of those channels is the print channel. So we take a beautifully crafted article and push it into print, push it into digital edition, push it into an app, push it into Facebook articles, push it into Apple News format, and everywhere else we can think of. We're some way away from that. Most publishers don't have the skills or the tools or the infrastructure or the finance to build those kind of systems. So how do we get around that? Having worked in publishing for many years and been a strong advocate of in-house solutions and owning the solutions, I'm now changing my mind, and it becomes from those projects where it's failed, where by the time the engine has been built, the world's moved on and it's no longer relevant. I think today it's best to look for strategic partnerships. Let the vendors do the hard work and then choose the one that's most relevant. As soon as they stop being relevant, move on to the next one. It's the only way I can see people with smaller budgets who need to be nimble and agile in the way they work and reach audiences, is to find a good partner. We also need to be careful with the proprietary formats. So Apple News format is a proprietary format, and Apple want you to design beautiful content that fits their format. They really don't care what Facebook articles look like, and they certainly don't care what Google editions are going to look like. If we do that, then we're going to become slaves to one particular media channel. It's far better if we can style the individual articles at a layer above Apple News format, and then it gets translated down into Apple News format, down into Facebook instant articles, and off to Tumblr and wherever you want it to go. If we are going to be active in all these channels I've talked about, and you saw that diagram at the start, which is the explosion of places that your digital audience live, then we've got to automate as many processes as possible. As soon as we start to put people into the mix, it gets slower and it gets expensive. Just paying a salary will often negate putting that content into that channel. So automation is really important. Simplify the workflows as much as possible. So look for partners who have simple solutions where you're not investing a great deal of time to learn how to create articles, how to style articles, and how to feed them into the different channels. For me, I think it's important that editorial teams start to think about 360 media working, and what I mean by that is you're no longer a print person, you're no longer a web person, you're not a social person, you're not a digital person, you're a brand person. You are fully engaged in all of these different ways of getting content out in front of an audience. And then the last bit of advice is you've got to experiment, you've got to learn, and you've got to adapt, and you've got to keep it going. You've got to keep learning from the mistakes and what works and what doesn't. Use your analytics and listen to your audience. It's vital because they're on the move and you've got to be on the move with them. Okay, to summarize, magazine media as a whole is still growing. It's growing at around about 10% year on year. Most of that growth is coming from mobile. So if you're not active on your mobile devices, then you're not going to see any growth. The new area is this potential vast digital audience I've talked about. Those people live in lots of individual channels, and it's not easy to get to them. They live in Pinterest, they live in Instagram, they live on Snapchat, they live in Facebook and Twitter, they live on Tumblr. You know where they are. It's how do we get content to them and how do we make money from that content. And I think Apple News format is the start of this new revolution where we shouldn't get overexcited. It's going to grow. It's going to become a mature market. I'm fairly sure of this, simply because Apple are putting this one application on over 250 million devices. So people are going to go there and have a look for content. If they find good quality content, they'll keep coming back, which will attract the advertisers. So there is a new, vast digital audience waiting for us. They like our content, we know that. It's just that we've got to work out how to get our individual articles into the channels where they live and make sure it's the right content for that particular channel. And if we get that right, then anything's possible. Your challenge right now is to act quickly, find a partner that is flexible and can help you. Look for one like PageLizard that can take editorial content from PDFs, create individual articles and feed them out into applications, into websites, into social and media feeds. Find people who offer a simple solution. Find ones who can style above the Apple News format or the Facebook article format. Somebody who's got a good CMS that they'll give you access to, so you can either do it yourself or get them to do it for you. I've tried to be quick with this particular presentation. I hope you've enjoyed it. There's lots more to learn. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Please contact either myself or PageLizard, and we can help you with this new and exciting way of reaching a vast digital audience.